Welcome to The Thinking Chamber. Why do empires collapse? Not always with a battle, and not always in one moment. Sometimes they fade, weakened by time, pressure, and the quiet force of change. In this video, we reflect on the lessons left behind by three of the history's great empires: Rome, the Ottomans, and the British. No empire ever thinks it will fall, and yet history is a graveyard of kingdoms that once called themselves eternal. Collapse doesn't always come with the thunder of war or the clang of revolution. Sometimes it arrives like water wearing down stone, slow, invisible, but inevitable. Power isn't always taken. Sometimes it simply slips away when no one is watching. Rome believed it was the light of civilization. The Ottomans believed they were divinely appointed to rule. And the British, they believed they were the future, the teachers, the civilizers, and the center of the world. But they all fell, not because they were weak, but because they stopped listening. They stopped evolving, and in the end, the world stopped fearing them. Part 1. Rome, the empire that forgot to believe in itself. Rome wasn't always a superpower. It began humbly as a republic that valued duty, community, and civic strength. But somewhere along the road to greatness, it forgot its roots. As the public became an empire, expansion brought wealth, but also corruption. Power collected in palaces, while the poor lined up for bread and spectacle. By the time Rome reached its peak, it had conquered vast territories across 3 continents. It built aqueducts, amphitheaters, and systems of law. But it also built its downfall step by step. Its economy became reliant on slave labor. Its politicians sold influence like merchants, and its army, once made of citizens, became loyal only to generals who paid the best. The empire was stretched thin, not just geographically, but morally. Inflation soared, public trust collapsed, civil wars tore through its core. And in 410 CE, when the Visigoths marched into Rome and looted its heart, the shock wasn't just military, it was psychological. The world's greatest empire had been breached, not because it lacked soldiers, but because it no longer inspired belief. Part 2. The Ottoman Empire. Power without renewal. If Rome was a lesson in overreach, the Ottomans were a warning against stagnation. Born in the ruins of Byzantium, the Ottomans rose with remarkable speed. They captured Constantinople, rebranded it Istanbul, and ruled an empire that stretched from North Africa to the Persian Gulf. For centuries, they were a mosaic of faiths, languages, and customs, held together by a powerful blend of tolerance and authority. But empires, like old buildings, require maintenance. The Ottomans built walls of tradition, but they forgot to build doors for reform. Innovation slowed. Scholars were censored. While Europe industrialized and experimented, the Ottomans clung to the old ways, convinced that what once worked would always work. By the 19th century, they were called the sick man of Europe, a term used not just with scorn, but with pity. Nationalist movements stirred in the Balkans. Arab subjects began questioning the center. Even within the palace, the once mighty sultans were reduced to figureheads, surrounded by intrigue, flattery, and paralysis. World War I was the final blow. Aligning with Germany, the empire found itself on the losing side. Its lands were carved by foreign hands. Its caliphate, the religious glue for millions, was abolished. What remained was a memory, glorious, complex, and ultimately defeated by its own fear of change. Part 3. The British Empire. Collapse in real time. The British Empire was unlike any before it. It did not conquer with elephants and catapults. It arrived with ships and stock markets. It spoke of civilization, but built its wealth on exploitation. At its height, Britain ruled over a quarter of the world's landmass and controlled the fate of 400 million people. It drew maps with rulers and renamed countries with pens. It claimed to civilize, but in practice, it extracted. India alone lost an estimated $45 trillion during its colonial rule. Its famines were not natural disasters, they were man-made, worsened by policies that prioritized exports over lives. In Bengal, 3 million starved in 1943, while British officials debated whether to intervene. Some didn't care. Churchill's cruel indifference echoed in the silence that followed. Across the empire, resistance simmered. Ireland endured a long and painful struggle for independence. India rose in revolt again and again, from the mutiny of 1857 to the Quit India movement of 1942. In Kenya, the Mau Mau rebellion was crushed with torture camps. But Kenya was not alone. Other nations stood in rebellion too. In Malaya, guerrilla fighters battled against colonial rule. And across the Caribbean, voices rose, demanding not just independence, but dignity. But empires are also undone by their own teachings. The British preached liberty in law, and those very ideals returned to haunt them. Colonized people began to ask, if freedom is a British value, why don't we have it? If justice is sacred, then where is ours? After 2 world wars, Britain was tired. It could no longer afford its empire, but its exit was anything but graceful. Partition in India left 2 million dead. Across Africa and Asia, independence came, but often at a cost paid in blood. And so many other nations had to claw their way out from under the shadow of empire. They were left with broken economies, unfamiliar borders, and borrowed systems that rarely fit the people they were meant to govern. And yet Britain never fully let go. Its fingerprints remain in court systems, borders, languages, and in the trauma still passed from generation to generation. Part 4. A shared legacy of silence and scars. Empires don't end when the last soldier leaves or the last flag falls. They linger in laws, in languages, in names carved into railway stations and street signs. But more than that, they linger in silence, in the things no one talks about, in family stories that trail off, in wounds passed down, not through history books, but through memory. Rome left behind ruins and roads, but it also left behind myths of superiority. The Ottomans left behind architectural beauty and culinary genius, but also unresolved tensions and deep religious divides. The British, yes, they built railways, but not out of generosity. These tracks were laid to extract, not connect. And when they left, they didn't just leave tracks behind. They fractured the states in South Asia, the Middle East, and Africa, imposing borders that served empire, not people, and igniting conflicts that never truly ended. This is the legacy empires leave. Not just monuments, but contradictions. They built libraries, but they burned them too. They brought law and disrupted justice. They spoke of unity while dividing. And when they left, they often blamed the very people they once ruled, as if the chaos they sowed was a sign those lands were always destined to fall. Part 5. Why they fall. Empires fall for many reasons. Corruption, arrogance, overreach, stagnation. But at their core, all empires share one fatal flaw. They begin to believe they are the exception. Rome believed that civilization was too advanced to collapse. The Ottomans believed their divinely inspired rule would hold forever. And the British, they believed their own narrative, that they were a force for good, a necessary presence in the disordered world. But no amount of propaganda can silence reality forever. The world changes, and the empire, no matter how gilded, how vast, begins to crack. Not all at once, but inevitably. As Fanon said, colonialism is not just a machine to think with. It is naked violence. And violence, no matter how justified, cannot sustain itself forever. We live in a post-imperial world, but we are still walking through its shadow. The collapse of empires did not bring a clean slate. It brought a complex inheritance. Nations formed from broken pieces, cultures stitched together by grief and resilience, diaspora still looking for a language that feels like home. The question is not just why empires fall, but what we choose to learn from them. Will we repeat their mistakes in new forms? Will we cloak domination in the language of development? Or will we finally listen to the voices that empires tried so hard to silence? Because history does not disappear. It settles into the foundations of our buildings. It echoes in our parliament. It speaks in accents shaped by conquest and migration. And if we do not confront it, we risk becoming empires ourselves. Empires fall, but they don't disappear. They become the ghosts in our politics and the fault lines in our maps. To understand why they collapsed is not just to study the past. It is to understand the future we are walking into. What you heard today wasn't just a story. It was history. And history still shapes the present. Like, share, and subscribe to The Thinking Chamber. Thank you so much for watching this. I'll see you in the next one.